While many have complained about the San Francisco Giants offense this year, talking about strikeouts, talking about feast or famine, maybe an over-reliance on home runs, what's actually hurt them so far is their pitching.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there if you have not already, and hit that subscribe button if you are watching on YouTube. Coming up on today's show, the Giants got destroyed at home again against the Dodgers, and what I find interesting here is, think about it. They scored the same number of runs as they did in the previous game, in which it was a great win. And the problem is they allowed 10 stinking runs. And overall in the season, it doesn't take, much effort to find that the problem, kind of the main problem for the Giants, has simply been preventing runs. Their ERA as a team is 4.71. I mean, that is not really getting it done. And the reality is it's 12 games. And so it doesn't mean, okay, they stink at pitching. And it's a couple of individual performers who have really kind of skewed the numbers. And it came into play again yesterday. Ross Stripling didn't cost them the game, but yesterday Taylor Rogers did. And Ross Stripling, I would say, kind of cost them a game against the Royals. And so, two games right there that you could have and maybe even should have won. If you flip them around, you're 7-5. And so, in the early season, things like this can happen. I mean, I look at the ERA leaderboard, and guess who's right next to the Giants? It's the Dodgers at 4.30. The Giants at 4.71. It's odd that there's no team in between those two, but those are the, Dodgers are 15th, Giants are 16th. You would think 4.71 would be worse than that, but there's, the A's have a 7.54 ERA, the Tigers have a 6.73 ERA. That's where the Giants are going next to play. But essentially, people, like I said, have been complaining about the offense, and I understand that there has been inconsistency and that they lead the league in strikeout rate, which just you don't want to do. But at the same time, the overall kind of offensive metrics are positive for the San Francisco Giants. And last night is a really good example, I think, because it feels when you're losing, you kind of look to the offense to try to get you back into being in a position to win. So you're critical of the offense because they aren't able to come back. But the fact is you allowed 10 runs. And in the previous game, when you allowed 0, 5 was plenty. And last night, 5 was not enough. It was not even close. It was half enough. And so anyway, that's just kind of how it goes. But obviously a 4.71 ERA is just not getting it done. And so when we kind of look under the hood, I did this just a couple days ago, but I'm going to check in on it again. As a pitching staff, the Giants have a lot going for them here. They're 8th in strikeout rate. They have the 8th highest strikeout rate as a pitching staff in Major League Baseball, not just the National League, so among all 30 teams. Their walk rate is 6th. And so to be in the top 8 in both of those categories, there's a metric called strikeout minus walk rate, which is one of the most important statistics for pitchers. It's looking at strikeouts and walks. Those are really important factors when we're evaluating pitchers. And the Giants as a team are 5th at 17.1% strikeout rate minus walk rate. And so what has hurt them is the home run ball. Plain and simple, it's been giving up home runs. And so that's why, and again, we discussed this the other day, their ERA is 4.71. Their FIP is 4.73, fielding independent pitching. And fielding independent pitching heavily factors in home runs. And the thing about home runs is that they don't stabilize quickly. And so basically, the strikeouts and the walks stabilize far more quickly. And so it's encouraging to be in the top 8 in both strikeout rate and walk rate as a pitching staff. And it's a good thing that the negative here is the home run, because, I mean, the Giants led the major leagues in allowing the fewest home runs each of the last 2 years. There's not a lot of reason for me to think, okay, well, now suddenly they're the worst team in the league at giving up homers. I think it's going to normalize. I really do. I'm not just saying that. I think that this will normalize. And what it is the home run to fly ball ratio is so high, 19.6%. And this is just a notorious, I don't like to call it luck because it's not always luck. It can be you're just really, really hittable. But what it is like a sustainability indicator. Home run to fly ball ratio for hitters and for pitchers can tell us if something's unsustainable. It's kind of like batting average on balls in play. It's another one of those type of metrics. And the Giants are last in the major leagues, allowing home runs on 19.6% of the fly balls that they've allowed. Now, this is one of those things where I would just imagine as time goes by, they're going to regress to league average, where league average is just 12.6%. So that's a lot fewer homers. And overall, the average home runs per 9 allowed by major league teams this year is 1.18 home runs per 9 innings. And for the San Francisco Giants, they are at 1.63 home runs per 9 innings. And again, this is a category in which they led the major leagues each of the last 2 seasons, even last year with the 81 and 81 record. And so as a result, the Giants, there's this metric called xFIP, which is expected fielding independent pitching. And it, because of what I'm saying, that home run to fly ball ratio is not quick to stabilize, what xFIP does is it says, okay, let's imagine that you just have a league average home run to fly ball ratio. And also let's imagine that another metric that's not quick to stabilize, batting average on balls in play, is also league average for you. And so it's like looking at basically the strikeout rate and the walk rate and saying, if you were just average in these other categories, which I would expect at the end of the year, the Giants should be at least average in those categories, it's saying, what would your ERA be if you were? And for the Giants, they are 5th best in Major League Baseball in this number, xFIP, at 3.89. And so it's basically saying they probably should have a 3.89 ERA, but it's actually 4.71. And the thing that's hurt them is kind of an unexpectedly high number of home runs. And so for all of those reasons, I mean, I'm just not long-term super concerned, but when we look at some individual performers, I mean, like I said, Ross Stripling, Taylor Rogers have really, really, really been bad so far. It's kind of funny, like, when I say baseball is hard to predict, Anthony DeSclafani has been by far their best pitcher. And I think a lot of people coming into the year would have predicted he'd be one of their worst. And he's been their best, whereas, you know, he's got an 0.73 ERA in 12 and a third innings. And Logan Webb's got a 6.35 ERA. But he's one of these guys where everything else, he's like the epitome of all this. Strikeout rate is great. Walk rate is great. It's just really, he's allowed 4 homers already. Pretty sure he allowed 9 in all of 2021 and 11 in all of 2022. So crazy high, like compared to the last couple of years. And home run, it can just happen. And I don't think it's going to last. I just think there's almost no chance that it lasts at that rate. So coming up in just a minute, we'll wrap up the discussion on the pitchers. I'm going to confirm or like back up my statements about the offense a little bit. And then some more Taylor Rogers meltdown, Darin Ruf joining the Major League roster yesterday. So a lot to get into, and we'll get into it in just a minute. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only and exclusions apply. All right, here we go. We are going to discuss, the Taylor Rogers meltdown, the hilarity of what he did after melting down, and just some of the pitching numbers, some of the hitting numbers. Giants are 5-7. It's not a great start, but it's also not a total disaster, and you're going on the road to face a couple of teams that you should be able to win a series against for both of them. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we're going to be doing a mailbag episode. You're very familiar with those, my everyday listeners, so be on the lookout for that. But just getting more into a little bit about the game last night, Giants had a lead. They jumped out to a 3-0 lead against Kershaw, who's, there was a note on the broadcast, like his first 26 starts against the Giants, he had like a 1.5 ERA or something. And then in his last 9 or something, it's been an ERA of 5 or 6. And so I give a lot of credit to actually the way the Giants do their platoon system and just having kind of dangerous righties up against Kershaw. Whereas in the past, under the previous regime and all that, they didn't, like Denard Span, Brandon Belt, Brandon Crawford, all these lefties against Clayton Kershaw, it was just not going to work. And it didn't. He just owned them every time. But lately, guys like Austin Slater, who's not currently healthy, have really gotten to Kershaw, and the Giants got to him early, but he really did settle in. Alex Cobb, he said it was the worst command he's ever had as a Giant, and I agree. He just could not find the zone consistently. And then he had a chance to make a play, and he booted it a little bit, and things kind of spiraled. But the Giants still had a lead. Also, we're going to get into Bryce Johnson having a concussion and Michael Conforto hurting his calf, so a lot more to talk about. But just want to mention Taylor Rogers, who the Giants signed to a 3-year, $33 million contract. So far, he has just been an utter disaster. It's been 3 1/3 innings, so we're not talking about a big sample here, but he has walked so many guys. His walk rate is 31.6%. And what did he do last night? He walked all 4 batters he faced, including on a pitch clock violation in a 3-2 count. And so hard times for Taylor Rogers, but he's obviously, the track record is more important than the most recent 3 1/3 innings. So it's the same thing with Ross Stripling, in my opinion. They're going to figure it out eventually, and it's just unfortunate that in the games that they've pitched a couple of times, it cost them. And so what can you do? They've got a track record. That's baseball. It just happens sometimes. Pitchers just have meltdowns, and both Stripling and Rogers are having meltdowns right now. But let me get into the injuries. Bryce Johnson, who is getting an opportunity here, has, by the way, we talk about strikeouts. Bryce Johnson's strikeout rate as a hitter is 50% on the young season. He's come up to the plate 20 times, and he struck out in 10 of them. And so, I expressed my concerns that he wouldn't be able to hit at the major league level. And it's obviously a small sample, but you talk about strikeout rate, 50%, that's not going to work. But still, he was getting an opportunity. He scored a big run, used his legs to help them win a game. And also the defense. We saw it. Like at the time, it was a game-saving play he made in center field off the bat of Freddie Freeman. I think tying run on third, go-ahead run on second, and I thought it was a home run off the bat. And Bryce Johnson went back and just made a tremendous leaping catch as he slammed into the wall. Some hang time, and then slammed into the wall. And kind of went down, looked like he stayed conscious, but clearly shaken up. And trainers come out, and he comes out of the game. It ended the inning. It was just a great catch. All the credit in the world to Johnson, but he was later diagnosed with a concussion, and Kapler said that he's very likely going to go on the injured list. And so that's an unfortunate break for him because he was getting an opportunity here. But the bat, like I said, there's not very long that they would be able to stick around with someone who's striking out half the time. And so it's just unfortunate. But what are they going to do? And then also Michael Conforto comes out of this game with calf tightness. And apparently he did not want to come out, but they kind of did it anyway. as a precaution. And so the Giants are off today, and then they go to Detroit, and they're, quote, optimistic that he'll be able to play the series opener in Detroit. And so I sure hope so, because they're already down Mitch Haniger in the outfield. They're down Austin Slater in the outfield. They're now down Bryce Johnson in the outfield. And then losing Conforto would leave who exactly in the outfield? It would be Mike Yastrzemski. And I mean, off the top of your head, like, who else do they have to play the outfield? So this is where some of the versatility comes into play, because I think one of the next guys up is Lamont Wade Jr. He clearly is like feeling frisky and healthy, and he's looked good on defense and at the plate, drawn a ton of walks, but like, it's not the worst backup plan to move Lamont Wade Jr. to the outfield, where in 2021, they won 107 games. He was primarily an outfielder for them. It's not like he's a horrible defender. I think you definitely do that before you put Jock Peterson in the outfield. And the upside of if you have to move Wade to the outfield is that it opens up first base to get more playing time for J.D. Davis or Wilmer Flores, both of whom kind of deserve more playing time. And so that's where the depth comes into play. They're down so many guys, and yet you're still not seeing them necessarily put in a position where it's like, who the heck do they even put out there? And so it's not just depth, it's also versatility. Having Wade be able to play first and play the outfield comes into play. And so I believe they're facing a righty in the first game of the series. If Conforto is fine, I would imagine you'll probably see Conforto in right and Wade in left and Yastrzemski in center. And then at first, either J.D. Davis or Wilmer Flores, and then just the rest kind of normal alignment. I guess Blake Sable, I was forgetting about Blake Sable. He could be in left as well. And so the thing is, against a left-handed pitcher, that's where it gets a little weird, because right now you're already seeing an alignment of like Elliot Ramos and Bryce Johnson and Michael Conforto. And if Bryce Johnson is not available out there and Wade is a lefty platoon player, suddenly you have more problems, and you start thinking about Tyro Estrada possibly playing some outfield. Yeah, so against lefties, and they have a lot coming up, that does become a bit of an issue, and you'd really like to have Slater and Haniger available. So we'll have to see what they do there. There's not necessarily an obvious fix. You're just going to probably have to have some lefties in there, like Yastrzemski and Conforto, against some left-handed pitchers. And so anyway, coming up in just a minute, I do want to address the overall team offense and kind of back up my point that I think they've been a good offensive team overall, despite some loud noises coming from some that maybe they're not. And also Darin Ruf back in the major leagues and made an immediate impact. But unfortunately, they lost the game. It looked like he might help them win, but no, it wasn't to be. So we'll get into it in just a minute. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Do you know how much your subscriptions really cost? Most Americans think they spend around $80 a month on subscriptions, but the actual cost is closer to $200. If you don't know exactly how much you're spending every month, you need Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. I know for me, this was a big issue. I have signed up for a million different things thinking, oh, I'll cancel before the end of the free trial, and then I forget, and I'm making a payment every month and not noticing. And so Rocket Money is a game changer. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person up to $720 a year. Stop throwing away your money. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb, rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. This episode is also brought to you by Built Bar. Are you looking for a delicious snack but you don't want all the sugar and calories? Then you need the best tasting protein bar ever. Built. You gotta try Built. If you're like me and you want a healthier snack but you don't want to compromise taste, it's just the thing for you. Like, we are seriously talking delicious candy bar flavors, churro, peanut butter, brownie, cookies and cream, you name it. Anything you want, you can find it. And they come in with a healthy profile, only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein in a typical bar. And now you don't have to wait around to get a box either. You can go to your nearest Walmart or Sam's Club and get your specialty flavors at built.com. But Walmart and Sam's Club has the classics. So head in today, pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs at Walmart, or at Sam's Club. You can get brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can thank me later. All right, as promised, more. I just want to back up my statement. Just check in on the offense, really, because when it's so early in the season, stuff like inconsistency doesn't bother me so much, and it's more about the big picture, in my opinion. Just like clump everything together and tell me what is the offense looking like. And overall, I mean, again, the strikeout rate being highest in Major League Baseball is not ideal, but you've got guys like Bryce Johnson striking out 50% of the time, and they won't tolerate that. And so he's obviously also going on the injured list. And so that perhaps lowers it a bit. And then you've got guys like Conforto and Jock Peterson performing far worse than their career norms in terms of strikeout rate. And so I just see no reason why that will continue either. And so I would expect this is going to come down. Some people like give me a hard time, maybe thinking it won't, but I'm very confident that the Giants, I mean, they could end up towards the back of the league, but I don't think it's going to be 28%. And keep in mind, when I started talking about this, it was first like 37%, and then it was like 32%. And so it has come down. It's just still high and still leading the major leagues in terms of being worst. But overall, a 110 weighted runs created plus for the Giants means their offense has been about 10% above average overall. I'm not factoring in consistency. Obviously, you want consistency. Here's the thing about consistency. If you're a team that outscores your opponents on the season, you're going to score an average of whatever, call it 4.6 runs per game and allow whatever, 4.4 runs a game. If you could literally just match your average every single game, you would win every single game because if you outscore your opponent overall in the season. So nobody's that consistent. Inconsistency is like necessarily a part of the game. And so I just like the Giants scored 5 runs in each of their last 2 games, and it shouldn't come as a shock. Like you're going to have games where you score 16, you're going to have games where you get shut out, you're going to have games where you score 5. And so I just think it's about the overall picture. And again, 110 weighted runs created plus, 100 is average, and that 110 number is 7th best in Major League Baseball. Giants batting average as a team is 13th best, so right around in the middle at 250, but their on-base percentage is 9th best because they walk an above average amount, and their slugging percentage is 6th best. Their isolated power is 4th best in Major League Baseball. Can you believe that? I just feel like people don't think of the Giants as a power hitting team, but they truly are. And I know some of you just don't like power, but my goodness, I mean, it is better to hit homers than to not hit them. Trust me. Let's look at who are some of the worst teams in the league at hitting homers. By the way, who's number 1? It's the Tampa Bay Rays. Who's number 2? The Dodgers. Who's number 3? The Giants. Number 4, the Yankees. And so there's a high correlation between hitting home runs and winning. And who's last? The Nationals, who are bad. Cleveland, kind of an anomaly in that they are truly built as like a non-home run hitting team and yet still manage to have some success. I think a lot of people kind of want the Giants to be more like a team like Cleveland. But overall, actually, Cleveland has been about 15% below average offensively this season by weighted runs created plus, hitting 235, 327 on base, 345 slugging. The next worst team in terms of home runs hit are the Tigers. And so, yeah, the Giants have 21 home runs and the team with the least has 5. I mean, imagine hitting 16 fewer home runs. That would really spell trouble for the Giants. So anyway, overall, like, I just think the offense, especially when you start playing some lesser opponents, I know they did play the Royals and they didn't have a great series, but as time goes on, I think this is going to play out in their favor and they're going to be a solid offensive team, and they've just got to get the pitching and specifically just allowing home runs under control. So finally, I just want to mention Darin Ruf added to the Major League roster. And in a corresponding move, they optioned Sean Jelly. And so what they did here was they opted to go with 14 position players and 12 pitchers. Typical is kind of 13 and 13. And there's a maximum. You cannot have more than 13 pitchers. And so the Giants are going with 12, or at least they did yesterday. So the fact that Bryce Johnson is likely to go on the injured list, you don't necessarily have to replace him with a hitter because they're already like basically carrying an extra hitter, and it's Darin Ruf. And so it could be another pitcher who comes up, especially, I mean, they have the day off on Thursday, but then they go and start a long stretch of games, I believe, without an off day, kind of like around 2 weeks, I think. I don't have the schedule pulled up. But anyway, it could be you just call back up a pitcher. Could be Sean Jelly himself back, but they might want to call up a position player. I don't know exactly who it would be. It's kind of a little bit unclear. They're not facing a lefty in that first game, and so maybe they wait on that. But Darin Ruf, I mean, just a cool story. He was a popular player among, I think, fans, and certainly in the clubhouse for the Giants when he was here in 2020, 2021, and part of 2022. And as I posted on Twitter yesterday, since the start of 2020, even counting his bad, very bad stint with the Mets, against left-handed pitching, Darin Ruf and Mookie Betts have the same results, essentially, weighted on base average, which is kind of a high-level, really good overall offensive metric. 370 weighted on base average. Well above average. Mookie Betts, well above average against left-handed pitching. And it's not like, oh, well, Mookie Betts has 300 more plate appearances against lefties. It's actually almost identical. And sure enough, Darin Ruf comes up in the first inning against the lefty, Clayton Kershaw, and hits a smash, just a rocket off the top of the left center field wall. He very nearly hit a home run in his first at-bat back with the Giants. And so that's why the Mets gave up so much to get him. And now the Giants have all those guys still, including J.D. Davis, who's like kind of a big part of the team now. And they have Ruf back. And so it's kind of, that trade has reached hilarious levels of one-sidedness. And I'm happy to have him back. And with all the lefties that are coming up, he's going to see some run here and be dangerous potentially. And it's kind of a no-risk proposition for the Giants. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked on Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers, tomorrow on the show, we'll be doing a mailbag episode. So look out on Twitter for a brand new prompt, and I'll be happy to see you tomorrow. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like the show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot. So thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow for that mailbag. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked on Giants.